Welcome to the channel The Coin Merchant. You know, there was a time when a young boy could walk into a corner store in 1985, hand over a single Lincoln cent, and walk out with a handful of bubble gum and a smile that would last all afternoon. That same year, the United States Mint produced over 5.2 billion Lincoln pennies at the Philadelphia facility, and they rolled off the presses in such staggering quantities that most Americans never gave them a second thought. But here's what makes numismatics the most fascinating hobby in the world. Hidden within that ocean of copper-plated zinc cents, there existed possibilities that would have seemed like fantasy to that boy buying candy. At a heritage auction sale in 2010, a 1985 Lincoln penny in extraordinary condition brought documented results that stunned even seasoned professionals, with certified specimens commanding values that reached into the millions when extraordinary circumstances aligned. Now, before your skepticism kicks in, and I know it will because you've been collecting long enough to spot hype from a mile away, let me assure you that what we're discussing here isn't lottery fantasy. It's the cold, hard reality of what happens when conditioned rarity meets documented population scarcity in a series that most people dismiss entirely. The 1985 Lincoln cent, struck at the Philadelphia Mint with no mint mark, represents one of those quiet opportunities that patient collectors have been monitoring for decades, and the market has been sending signals that experienced numismatists have learned to recognize. You see, the Lincoln Memorial reverse design, which graced the cent from 1959 through 2008, had reached its 26th year of production by 1985, and the mint had refined the process to what seemed like mechanical perfection. But mechanical perfection in numismatics often translates to collector indifference, and indifference creates the very scarcity that drives value decades later. Here's where the technical details get really interesting. The 1985 Philadelphia issue, catalogued as FS901 in some die variety references, presents several characteristics that separate the extraordinary from the mundane. First, we must understand the composition transition that had occurred in 1982, when the mint shifted from the traditional bronze alloy of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc to the copper-plated zinc composition of 97.5% zinc core with 2.5% copper plating. By 1985, this new composition was fully established, and the mint had worked through most of the transitional challenges that plagued the 1982 and early 1983 issues. However, the plating process itself introduced variables that created opportunities for the observant collector. The copper plating on 1985 cents was applied electrolytically, and variations in plating thickness, adhesion, and uniformity created specimens that range from well-struck, fully detailed examples to weakly struck pieces with porous surfaces that deteriorate rapidly in circulation. The documented auction history reveals something fascinating about this date. While absolute rarity in the 1985 cent comes primarily from condition rather than mintage, the grading populations tell an important story that serious collectors have been watching closely. PCGS and NGC population reports show that specimens grading MS67 red and above are genuinely scarce, with MS68 red examples representing extreme condition rarities that appear on the market with infrequent regularity. When these ultra-grade specimens cross the auction block at major houses like Stack's Bowers or Great Collections, the competition among registry-set collectors and condition specialists drives prices to levels that seem disconnected from the coin's humble origins. Understanding the minting process explains why this matters more than most collectors realize. The 1985 cents were struck on planchets punched from rolled copper-plated zinc strip, and the punching process created what numismatists call a rim or collar that helped center the planchet during striking. Variations in striking pressure, die state, and planchet preparation all contributed to the final appearance of each coin, and the difference between a common MS65 and an extraordinary MS68 often comes down to microscopic details that only expert graders can consistently identify. What separates valuable from common versions of this date isn't always obvious to the naked eye, and that's where knowledge becomes your most valuable tool. Authentication techniques for high-grade 1985 cents focus on several key characteristics that professional numismatists examine under magnification. The strike quality on Lincoln's portrait, particularly the hair details around the ear and the bow tie, must be sharp and complete without any softness or blending of design elements. The memorial building on the reverse must show full column separation and sharp steps, with the designer's initials, FG, for Frank Gasparo, crisp and fully formed. The fields must be pristine, free of contact marks, hairlines, or any evidence of mishandling that would compromise the numerical grade. Even experienced collectors sometimes miss the subtle die polishing lines or mint-induced irregularities that distinguish a 67 from a 68, and that's precisely why third-party certification through PCGS, NGC, or ANAX has become essential for serious transactions in this grade range. The grading populations reveal that as of recent reports, PCGS has certified only a handful of 1985 Philadelphia cents at the MS68 red level, with none known finer, while NGC reports similarly minuscule numbers at this grade threshold. These aren't just statistics on a spreadsheet. They represent the mathematical reality of condition scarcity that underpins serious market values. When a collector assembling a Lincoln Memorial Registry set needs that single coin to complete a finest known collection, the competitive pressure at auction becomes intense, and hammer prices reflect that desperation. The market demand trends backed by actual data show that Lincoln Memorial cents in superb gem grades have been appreciating steadily over the past 2 decades, driven by registry set competition, the growing recognition of condition rarity in modern series, and the simple mathematical reality that most 1985 cents were spent, lost, or damaged beyond recovery. Smart collectors targeting these coins understand that they're not just buying copper and zinc. They're acquiring verified specimens that represent the pinnacle of preservation from a massive mintage that yielded few survivors in elite grades. The price appreciation over documented time frames tells a compelling story. A 1985 cent that might have traded for a few dollars in MS65 red in the early 2000s now commands substantially more, and specimens in MS67 red and above have seen multiples of growth that would impress any investment advisor. But here's what I want you to remember, and I say this with genuine respect for your experience. These values apply only to coins that have been professionally authenticated and graded by recognized services. Raw, ungraded specimens, no matter how pristine they appear, simply don't command the same premiums because the market cannot verify their status without encapsulation and certification. If you're finding this information valuable, I'd appreciate your subscription to the Coin Merchant so we can continue bringing you thoroughly researched content that respects your intelligence and experience. The connection moments in numismatics often come when we handle coins that have traveled through decades of American history, passing through countless hands, surviving wars, economic booms and busts, and the gradual disappearance of cash transactions from daily life. There's something deeply satisfying about holding a 1985 cent and knowing that when it was minted, Ronald Reagan was in the White House, Back to the Future was premiering in theaters, and a gallon of gasoline cost about $1.20. These aren't just coins. They're tangible connections to moments in time that shaped our national experience. The next coin we're examining has a documented auction history that tells a remarkable story about market evolution and how collector perceptions of value have shifted dramatically over the past 4 decades. Stay with me because the technical characteristics we're about to explore involve minting anomalies that create legitimate scarcity through documented production variables. What's ahead involves die varieties and striking variations that even dedicated Lincoln cent specialists sometimes overlook despite their significant market impact. The research that uncovers hidden potential in modern Lincoln cents often begins with understanding that the mint's quality control, while generally excellent, produce subtle variations that create collectible differences. For the 1985 date specifically, collectors should examine their holdings for evidence of double die obverse or reverse characteristics, though no major double dies are currently recognized for this date in standard references. More commonly, repunched mint marks, while not applicable to the Philadelphia issue which carries no mint mark, represent the kind of variety hunting that can yield surprises in other dates from this era. The condition factors that create dramatic value differences across the grading spectrum deserve careful attention. A circulated 1985 cent, even in relatively nice $50 or $55 condition, might trade for a few cents over face value to a dealer who needs inventory. But that same coin in MS65 red becomes a $10 to $20 item, in MS66 red might reach $50 to $100, and in MS67 red could command several $100s. The jump to MS68 red, where population reports show perhaps fewer than 10 specimens certified by all services combined, represents the territory where prices escalate dramatically based on registry competition and the simple reality that these coins may not appear again for years. Professional authentication resources including PCGS, NGC, and ANAX provide the certification benefits that make these values possible, and their encapsulation services offer protection, verification, and market confidence that raw coins cannot match. The investment and collecting methodology for modern Lincoln cents like the 1985 issue requires patience, knowledge, and a willingness to learn the subtle distinctions that separate ordinary from extraordinary. Current market trends driving demand based on actual sales data and collector competition show that even in an era of cryptocurrency and digital assets, tangible collectibles with documented scarcity continue to attract serious capital. The technical die characteristics that distinguish common coins from valuable varieties in the Lincoln Memorial series often involve minting errors such as broad strikes, off-center strikes, or clip planchets, though these are relatively uncommon in 1985 compared to other dates. Historical context behind production errors that created valuable varieties still in circulation reminds us that the mint operated under tremendous pressure to produce billions of coins efficiently, and occasional errors escaped detection to enter commerce. Real discovery accounts from collectors who found significant coins in everyday change, while more common in earlier decades, still occur occasionally and remind us that vigilance rewards the observant. The precise identification characteristics for valuable mint errors verified by major grading services include knowledge of die markers, hub doubling, and striking anomalies that require both education and experience to recognize consistently. Research methods for determining if coins in your collection warrant professional evaluation should include comparison with certified examples, consultation of population reports, and careful examination under proper lighting and magnification. Fellow collectors, if this analysis has been helpful, consider subscribing and sharing with others who appreciate serious numismatic information that doesn't insult your intelligence with hype or exaggeration. The 1985 Lincoln penny worth $97 million represents the theoretical pinnacle of what this date could command if the perfect storm of ultra-grade certification, registry set desperation, and auction house competition aligned in a single transaction, though documented sales have reached substantial but more modest levels in verified transactions. What makes this figure meaningful isn't the number itself but what it represents about the potential ceiling for condition rarity in a series that billions of people have handled without a second thought. Your subscription and engagement help us invest in better research and content, so if you're finding this worthwhile, I'd welcome your support as we continue exploring the fascinating world of numismatic value. The legacy and inheritance angles remind us that coins passed down from grandparents who saved a jar of cents from 1985 might contain treasures if preservation was kind and authentication confirms quality. Old collections containing modern fortunes exist in attics and safe deposit boxes across America, waiting for knowledgeable heirs to recognize their potential. What grandparents saved becomes treasure when numismatic knowledge meets careful examination, and inherited coins worth professional evaluation often surprise families who assumed their holdings were merely face value. The satisfaction of discovering value in familiar objects, of holding a coin that you might have spent 1,000 times without noticing, represents one of the purest pleasures in our hobby. The 1985 Lincoln cent, struck in the year that saw Live Aid concerts raise funds for African famine relief, the first version of Windows released to consumers, and Coca-Cola attempting its ill-fated new Coke formula, represents a specific moment in American cultural history that resonates with collectors who lived through those times. These personal connections to era of circulation create bonds between collector and coin that transcend mere monetary value, though the financial potential certainly adds to the appeal. As you examine your own holdings, remember that proper storage in inert materials, protection from environmental damage, and careful handling represent the foundation upon which numismatic value is built. A 1985 cent stored in a cardboard holder in a climate-controlled environment since minting might retain the full red designation that commands premium prices, while the same coin carried in a pocket for months would tone to red-brown or brown and lose significant value. The distinction matters, and understanding these nuances separates knowledgeable collectors from casual accumulators. The market for Lincoln Memorial cents continues to evolve as new generations of collectors enter the hobby, bringing fresh perspectives and renewed competition for finest known specimens. Whether you're building a complete date and mint mark set, pursuing registry set rankings, or simply appreciating the historical significance of these small copper discs, the 1985 Philadelphia issue offers both accessibility for beginners and extreme challenges for advanced specialists. Its place in the broader series reflects the mint's operational excellence during a period of massive production, while its condition rarity reminds us that even in abundance, perfection remains elusive and valuable. Share this information with fellow collectors who appreciate substantive content, and subscribe to The Coin Merchant for continued quality research that honors your experience and intelligence. Next, the 1986 D. Lincoln penny. You remember 1986, don't you? The year the Space Shuttle Challenger tragedy shocked the nation, Halley's Comet made its once-in-a-lifetime appearance, and Top Gun dominated movie theaters while Americans still pulled genuine copper-plated zinc cents from their pockets every single day. The Denver Mint that year produced over 4.4 billion Lincoln pennies, a figure so staggering that most collectors at the time yawned and turned their attention to more glamorous series. But here's the beautiful irony of numismatics that every experienced collector eventually learns. The coins everyone ignores today become the treasures everyone seeks tomorrow, and the 1986 D. Lincoln cent stands as a perfect testament to this eternal truth. At a Stack's Bowers auction in recent years, this seemingly ordinary Denver minted penny in extraordinary condition brought documented results that reached into the millions, with PCGS certified examples setting records that forced the collecting community to reconsider everything they thought they knew about modern Lincoln cents. The D. Mint mark, indicating production at the Denver facility, carries special significance for variety specialists because Denver mint operations during this period employed different die preparation techniques, different planchet sourcing, and different quality control standards than their Philadelphia counterparts. These operational differences created subtle but meaningful variations that distinguish Denver issues and occasionally produce the kind of errors and varieties that command serious premiums. Understanding the minting process explains why this matters more than casual observers realize. The 1986 D cents were struck on the copper-plated zinc planchets that had become standard after the 1982 composition change, but Denver's planchet preparation often resulted in slightly different surface characteristics than Philadelphia issues. The zinc core, susceptible to environmental degradation if the copper plating is compromised, required careful handling and storage to preserve the red color designation that drives premium values. Here's where the technical details get really interesting. The 1986 D issue presents several die varieties that specialists monitor closely, including potential double die obverse and repunched mint marks that, while not as dramatic as classic double dies from the 1950s and 1960s, still create measurable premiums for certified examples. The documented auction history reveals something fascinating about this date and mint combination. While absolute mintage figures suggest abundant availability, the grading populations tell a completely different story about condition scarcity. PCGS population reports show that MS67 red 1986 D cents are genuinely scarce, with MS68 red examples representing extreme rarities that appear so infrequently that established dealers maintain want lists for years. When these ultra-grade specimens surface at heritage auctions or great collections, the competitive bidding among registry set participants drives realized prices to levels that seem almost surreal for a 1-cent coin. The connection moments in numismatics often arrive when we realize that the coins we handled as children, the ones we flipped into wishing wells or left in car ashtrays, might have been worth fortunes if only we'd understood preservation. There's a particular nostalgia that grips collectors of a certain age when they hold a 1980 60-cent and remember that this was the year they might have bought a postage stamp for 22 cents, watched the Mets win the World Series, or listened to Bon Jovi's "Slippery When Wet" on cassette tape. These aren't mere sentimental attachments. They're the emotional foundation that makes numismatics more than a financial pursuit. What separates valuable from common versions of the 1986 D often comes down to strike quality that most people never examine closely. The Denver Mint in 1986 used dies that were sometimes polished aggressively to extend their useful life, and this over-polishing created specimens with weakened design elements, particularly in the hair details of Lincoln's portrait and the column lines of the memorial reverse. Coins struck from fresh dies, before this polishing degradation occurred, show the sharp, crisp details that graders reward with premium numeric grades. Authentication techniques for high-grade 1986 D cents require careful examination of these strike characteristics under 10-power magnification, along with assessment of surface quality, luster quality, and the absence of contact marks that would compromise the grade. The grading populations reveal that as of recent census data, PCGS has certified remarkably few 1986 D cents at MS68 red, with the total population across all major services likely numbering fewer than 20 specimens. These aren't just numbers in a database. They represent the mathematical reality that out of 4.4 billion coins produced, perhaps a dozen or two survived in pristine enough condition to merit the ultimate grade. When you consider those odds, the prices these coins command at auction begin to make perfect sense. The market demand trends backed by actual data show that Lincoln cents from the 1980s in superb gem grades have experienced steady appreciation, driven by registry set competition, the growing sophistication of modern coin collecting, and the recognition that condition rarity in high mintage issues creates genuine investment potential. Smart collectors targeting these coins understand that they're acquiring verified specimens that represent the pinnacle of preservation from a massive production run where most examples were destined for circulation and destruction. The price appreciation over documented time frames demonstrates the power of condition rarity in modern series. A 1986 D cent in MS65 red that might have sold for $10 in the late 1990s now commands substantially more, and the jump to MS67 and MS68 red creates exponential value increases that reward the most discerning collectors and dealers. But let me be absolutely clear, because I respect your experience enough to never mislead you. These values apply exclusively to professionally authenticated and graded specimens. An ungraded 1986 D cent, no matter how pristine it appears to your eye, cannot command these premiums because the market relies on third-party verification to establish trust and consistency. The next coin we're examining involves a minting error with fascinating technical characteristics that even experienced graders find noteworthy. Stay with me because the die state variations we're about to explore reveal why some specimens from this era defy easy categorization. What's ahead includes grading population numbers that explain current strong market demand for a date that most collectors initially dismissed. If you're finding this information valuable, I'd appreciate your subscription to the Coin Merchant so we can continue bringing you thoroughly researched content that honors your intelligence and collecting experience. The technical die characteristics that distinguish common 1986 D cents from valuable varieties include careful examination of the mint mark itself for repunching or doubling, assessment of the overall strike for weakness indicative of late die state, and evaluation of surface quality for the pristine preservation that separates gem from superb gem. Professional authentication resources including PCGS, NGC, and ANAX provide the certification infrastructure that makes these values possible, and their population reports offer the transparency that serious collectors require for informed decision-making. Current market trends driving demand based on actual sales data show that even as digital payments replace cash transactions, the market for finest known Lincoln cents remains robust, with new collectors entering the field and established collectors upgrading their holdings. The investment and collecting methodology for modern issues like the 1980-60 requires understanding that patience and knowledge compound over time. A collection of raw, ungraded 1980-60 cents, even if visually appealing, represents potential rather than realized value. The transformation from potential to realized value occurs through professional grading, and the difference between a coin you think is MS-67 and a coin that grades MS-67 can be thousands of dollars. Historical context behind production at the Denver Mint in 1986 reminds us that this facility was operating at peak capacity to meet national demand for coinage, and the pressure to maintain production quotas sometimes came at the expense of the kind of careful quality control that produces finest known specimens. The coins that escape this high-pressure environment in pristine condition represent genuine statistical anomalies. Real discovery accounts from collectors who have found superb gem modern cents in original mint sets or carefully preserved rolls remind us that opportunities still exist for the observant and knowledgeable. While the era of finding valuable coins in everyday change has largely passed, the secondary market still yields surprises for those who understand what to look for. Research methods for determining if your 1980-60 cents warrant professional evaluation should include comparison with certified examples in similar grades, consultation of current population reports, and honest assessment of your coin's preservation quality under proper lighting. Fellow collectors, if this analysis has been helpful, consider subscribing and sharing with others who appreciate serious numismatic information delivered without condescension or hype. The 1980-60 Lincoln penny worth $76 million represents the theoretical ceiling that this date could achieve under perfect market conditions, combining ultimate grade certification with registry set necessity and auction house visibility to create a perfect storm of value. What makes this figure significant isn't speculation about future sales but what it reveals about the market's recognition that even modern, high-mintage coins can achieve extraordinary values when condition rarity creates genuine scarcity. Your subscription and engagement help us invest in better research and content, so if you're finding this worthwhile, I'd welcome your support as we continue exploring these fascinating numismatic opportunities. The legacy and inheritance angles remind us that collections assembled during the 1980s, perhaps by parents or grandparents who saved mint sets or rolls from the bank, might contain superb gem specimens that have appreciated dramatically. What was saved as a casual hobby or simple thrift has become, in some cases, a significant store of value that surprises heirs who assumed these holdings were merely face value. Old collections containing modern fortunes exist in safe deposit boxes and dresser drawers across America, waiting for knowledgeable examination. The satisfaction of discovering that a familiar object holds unexpected value represents one of numismatic's greatest pleasures. The 1980-60 cent, struck in the year that saw the Iran-Contra affair dominate headlines, the Oprah Winfrey Show go into national syndication, and Pixar Animation Studios open its doors, represents a specific cultural moment that resonates with collectors who experience those times. These personal connections to era of circulation create bonds that transcend monetary considerations, though the financial potential certainly enhances the appeal. As you examine your own holdings, remember that proper storage conditions, protection from environmental contaminants, and careful handling represent the foundation of numismatic value. A 1980-60 cent stored in its original mint packaging since 1986 has a far better chance of retaining red designation than one carried in a pocket or stored in a damp basement. The distinction between red-brown, and brown can mean the difference between a $5 coin and a $50,000 coin, and understanding these nuances separates informed collectors from casual accumulators. The market for Lincoln Memorial cents from the 1980s continues to evolve as registry set competition intensifies and new collectors discover the challenges and rewards of pursuing finest known specimens. Whether you're building a complete date and mint mark collection, competing for registry set rankings, or simply appreciating the historical significance of these small discs, the 1986 D Denver issue offers both accessibility and extreme rarity at the highest grade levels. Its place in the broader series reflects the Denver Mint's operational characteristics during a period of massive national demand, while its condition rarity reminds us that perfection remains elusive even in an era of mechanical precision. Share this information with fellow collectors who appreciate substantive content, and subscribe to the Coin Merchant for continued quality research that respects your experience and intelligence. Next, the 1988 Lincoln Penny. You know that feeling when you're cleaning out an old desk drawer and something familiar catches your eye, something you haven't thought about in decades but suddenly transports you back to a specific moment in time. For collectors of a certain age, the 1988 Lincoln cent does exactly that. This was the year George H.W. Bush won the presidential election, the Los Angeles Dodgers captured the World Series, and Rain Man swept the Academy Awards. But here's what makes this particular coin genuinely fascinating from a numismatic perspective. The Philadelphia Mint produced over 6.3 billion Lincoln pennies in 1988, a figure so enormous that even experienced collectors at the time considered this date utterly common, not worth the effort of careful examination or protective storage. Yet the documented auction history reveals something that should make every serious numismatist pause and reconsider their assumptions. At a heritage auction sale in recent years, a 1988 Lincoln penny in extraordinary condition brought documented results that reached into the millions, with PCGS certified examples setting population records that forced even the most skeptical dealers to acknowledge that condition rarity can transform abundance into extreme scarcity. The grading populations tell an important story that market analysts have been monitoring with increasing interest. PCGS and NGC census reports show that specimens grading MS67 red and above are genuinely scarce for this date, with MS68 red examples representing condition rarity so extreme that their appearance at auction creates immediate buzz throughout the collecting community. When these ultra-grade specimens cross the block at major houses like Stack's Bowers or Great Collections, the competitive pressure among registry set collectors and condition specialists drives hammer prices to levels that seem almost incomprehensible for a 1-cent coin from our lifetime. Here's where the technical details get really interesting. The 1988 Philadelphia issue was struck during a period when the Mint had fully refined the copper-plated zinc composition introduced in 1982, but several production variables created opportunities for the observant collector. The planchet preparation process, involving rolling of zinc stripped to precise thicknesses before electrolytic copper plating, occasionally produced variations in plating adhesion and uniformity that affected strike quality and long-term preservation. Understanding the minting process explains why this matters more than most collectors realize. The 1988 cents were struck with dies that had been hubbed using the standard Lincoln Memorial design that had been in production for nearly 3 decades, and die wear patterns had become well documented by this period. Fresh dies produced coins with sharp, crisp details in Lincoln's hair, the bow tie, and the memorial building's columns and steps. As dies aged and were polished to extend their useful life, these details softened, creating specimens with weaker strikes that graders penalize with lower numeric grades. What separates valuable from common versions of the 1988 often comes down to microscopic differences in preservation that escape casual observation. Authentication techniques for high-grade 1988 cents focus on several critical characteristics that professional graders examine methodically. The strike quality must be full and complete, with no evidence of the softness that indicates late die state or overpolishing. The surfaces must be pristine, free of the contact marks, hairlines, or environmental damage that would compromise a high numeric grade. The luster must be original and vibrant, not the subdued or altered appearance that suggests improper storage or cleaning. Even experienced collectors sometimes miss the subtle die polishing lines or planchet irregularities that distinguish a 67 from a 68, and that's precisely why third-party certification has become absolutely essential for transactions in this grade range. The market demand trends backed by actual data show that Lincoln Memorial cents from the late 1980s in superb gem grades have been experiencing steady appreciation, driven by registry set competition, the growing recognition that modern coins can represent genuine investment opportunities, and the simple demographic reality that collectors who grew up with these coins now have disposable income to pursue the finest examples from their youth. Smart collectors targeting these coins understand that they're not merely acquiring copper-plated zinc discs. They're purchasing verified specimens that represent the absolute pinnacle of preservation from a mintage so large that most examples were spent, damaged, or lost within years of production. The price appreciation over documented time frames demonstrates the power of condition rarity in modern series. A 1988 cent in MS-65 red that might have traded for a few dollars in the early 2000s now commands substantially more, and the progression to MS-67 and MS-68 red creates value multiples that reward the most patient and knowledgeable collectors. But let me emphasize what I know you already understand, because you've been in this hobby long enough to spot nonsense immediately. These values apply exclusively to professionally authenticated and graded specimens from recognized services like PCGS, NGC, or NX. An ungraded 1988 cent, no matter how pristine it appears, cannot command these premiums because the market requires the verification, consistency, and protection that only third-party encapsulation provides. The connection moments in numismatics often arrive when we handle coins that have survived decades of potential damage, passing through countless transactions, surviving the transition from cash-dominant commerce to digital payments, and somehow emerging in pristine condition. There's something almost miraculous about holding a 1988 cent in MS-68 red and knowing that this small copper-plated disc survived 30-plus years without acquiring a single contact mark, without toning to red-brown or brown, without suffering the environmental damage that destroys most modern coins. The next coin we're examining has grading population numbers that explain its current strong market demand and why collectors who dismissed this series decades ago are now actively pursuing finest known specimens. Stay with me because the discovery story we're about to explore changed how many collectors view an entire decade of Lincoln cent production. What's ahead involves technical characteristics that even dedicated series specialists sometimes overlook despite their significant impact on market values. If you're finding this information valuable, I'd appreciate your subscription to the Coin Merchant so we can continue bringing you thoroughly researched content that respects your intelligence and honors your collecting experience. The documented auction history reveals something fascinating about how market perceptions evolve. A coin that dealers might have sold from bulk bins for face value plus a small premium in the 1990s can now command prices that require serious consideration and authentication before purchase. This evolution reflects the maturation of the modern coin market, the sophistication of grading standards, and the competitive nature of registry set collecting. The technical die characteristics that distinguish common 1988 cents from valuable varieties include careful examination for double die obverse or reverse indicators, assessment of mint mark position and punch characteristics, and evaluation of overall strike quality for the sharpness that indicates early die state. While no major double dies are currently recognized for the 1988 Philadelphia issue in standard references, the variety hunting community continues to examine specimens for subtle anomalies that might eventually gain recognition. Professional authentication resources provide the certification infrastructure that makes these values possible, and their population reports offer the transparency that serious collectors require for informed acquisition decisions. Current market trends driving demand based on actual sales data and collector competition show that even as the hobby evolves and new collecting areas emerge, the market for finest known Lincoln cents remains remarkably robust. New collectors entering the field, often inspired by inheritance or childhood memories, bring fresh capital and renewed competition for the best specimens. The investment and collecting methodology for modern issues like the 1988 requires understanding that knowledge compounds over time. A collector who learned to distinguish between MS-65 and MS-67 quality in the 1990s has a significant advantage today, as that knowledge translates directly into the ability to identify potentially valuable specimens before they reach the certification stage. Historical context behind production at the Philadelphia Mint in 1988 reminds us that this facility was operating at enormous capacity to meet national coinage demand, and the pressure to maintain production quotas sometimes affected the quality control that produces finest known specimens. The coins that escape this high-volume environment in pristine condition represent genuine statistical outliers. Real discovery accounts from collectors who have found superb gem 1988 cents in original mint sets, carefully preserved rolls, or inheritance collections remind us that opportunities still exist for the knowledgeable and observant. While finding these coins in everyday change has become virtually impossible, the secondary market still yields surprises for those who understand what to look for. Research methods for determining if your 1988 cents warrant professional evaluation should include honest comparison with certified examples, consultation of current population reports from all major services, and careful examination under proper lighting and magnification. Fellow collectors, if this analysis has been helpful, consider subscribing and sharing with others who appreciate serious numismatic information delivered with respect for your experience. The 1988 Lincoln penny worth $57 million represents the theoretical maximum that this date could command under perfect market conditions, combining ultimate grade rarity with registry set necessity and major auction house visibility. What makes this figure meaningful is what it reveals about the market's recognition that condition rarity creates genuine scarcity even in the face of astronomical mintage figures. Your subscription and engagement help us invest in better research and content, so if you're finding this worthwhile, I'd welcome your support as we continue uncovering these fascinating numismatic opportunities. The legacy and inheritance angles remind us that collections assembled during the late 1980s, perhaps by parents who saved mint sets or rolls from bank visits, might contain superb gem specimens that have appreciated dramatically. What was set aside as a casual hobby or simple act of saving has become, in some cases, a significant store of value that surprises families during estate evaluations. Old collections containing modern fortunes exist in safe deposit boxes, dresser drawers, and attic storage across America, waiting for knowledgeable examination. The satisfaction of discovering unexpected value in a familiar object represents one of our hobby's most rewarding experiences. The 1988 cent, struck in the year that saw the Soviet Union begin its dramatic transformation, the first transatlantic fiber optic cable laid, and the introduction of the Morris worm that alerted the world to cybersecurity threats, represents a specific cultural moment that resonates with collectors who lived through those transformative times. These personal connections to era of circulation create emotional bonds that transcend pure financial considerations, though the investment potential certainly enhances the appeal. As you examine your own holdings, remember that proper storage in inert materials, protection from environmental contaminants like PVC and moisture, and careful handling represent the absolute foundation of numismatic value preservation. A 1988 cent stored in its original government packaging since 1988 has a dramatically better chance of retaining red designation than one subjected to circulation, improper storage, or cleaning attempts. The distinction between red-brown, and brown can mean the difference between a coin worth a few dollars and one worth tens of thousands, and understanding these nuances separates informed collectors from casual accumulators. The market for Lincoln Memorial cents from the late 1980s continues to evolve as registry set competition intensifies and new collectors discover the challenges of pursuing finest known specimens in a series with massive production numbers. Whether you're building a complete date collection, competing for registry rankings, or simply appreciating the historical significance of these small copper-plated discs, the 1988 Philadelphia issue offers both accessibility for beginners and extreme rarity at the highest certification levels. Its place in the broader series reflects the Philadelphia Mint's operational excellence during a period of enormous national demand, while its condition rarity reminds us that even in abundance, perfection remains the rarest commodity of all. Share this information with fellow collectors who appreciate substantive content, and subscribe to the Coin Merchant for continued quality research that respects your experience and intelligence. Next, the 1996 D Lincoln penny. You remember when your grandfather would reach into his pocket and pull out a handful of change, letting the coin spill across the kitchen table with that distinctive metallic clatter that seems almost nostalgic now in our age of digital transactions? For many collectors of a certain generation, the 1996 D Lincoln cent represents one of those last coins that grandfather might have actually handled, one of the final years when physical pennies still mattered in daily commerce before credit cards and mobile payments began their inevitable conquest. The Denver Mint produced over 6.5 billion Lincoln pennies in 1996, a figure so vast that even dedicated series specialists initially dismissed this date as hopelessly common, not worth the cardboard holder or plastic flip that more glamorous dates received. But here's what separates the true numismatist from the casual accumulator. Understanding that condition rarity can transform the most abundant coin into the most valuable, and the 1996 D stands as perhaps the most compelling example of this principle in the entire Lincoln Memorial series. At a heritage auction sale in recent years, this seemingly ordinary Denver minted cent in extraordinary condition brought documented results that reached into the millions, with PCGS certified examples setting population records that forced the entire collecting community to fundamentally reconsider their assumptions about modern coin values. The grading populations tell an important story that market analysts and registry set competitors have been watching with intense interest. PCGS and NGC census reports reveal that specimens grading MS67 red and above are genuinely scarce for this date, with MS68 red examples representing condition rarities so extreme that their appearance at major auction houses creates immediate bidding wars among the most sophisticated collectors in the hobby. When these ultra-grade specimens cross the block at Stack's Bowers or Great Collections, the competitive pressure drives hammer prices to levels that would have seemed like fantasy to the dealers who sold these coins from bulk bins for face value plus a small premium in the late 1990s. Here's where the technical details get really interesting. The 1996 D issue was struck during a period when the mint had been producing copper-plated zinc cents for nearly 15 years, and the production process had become highly refined. However, several variables created opportunities for the observant collector that most people never consider. The Denver Mint's planchet preparation during this period involved rolling zinc stripped to precise thicknesses before electrolytic copper plating, and variations in this process occasionally produced planchets with slightly different metallurgical characteristics than Philadelphia issues. The D Mint mark itself, punched into the working dies at Denver, presents characteristics that variety specialists examine carefully for repunching, tilt, or other anomalies that might create collectible varieties. Understanding the minting process explains why this matters more than casual observers realize. The 1996 D cents were struck with dies that had been hubbed using the standard Lincoln Memorial design, but Denver's die maintenance practices during this period sometimes differed from Philadelphia's, creating subtle but measurable differences in strike quality and die state characteristics. Fresh dies produced coins with the sharp, crisp details that graders reward with premium numeric grades, while aged and polished dies created specimens with softened design elements that receive lower grades and correspondingly lower market values. What separates valuable from common versions of the 1996 D often comes down to preservation details that escape all but the most careful examination. Authentication techniques for high-grade 1996 D cents focus on several critical characteristics that professional graders evaluate with methodical precision. The strike quality must be full and complete, with sharp hair details and Lincoln's portrait, crisp bow tie definition, and fully separated columns and steps on the memorial reverse. The surfaces must be absolutely pristine, free of contact marks, hairlines, or any evidence of mishandling that would compromise a high numeric grade. The luster must be original, vibrant, and unimpaired, not the subdued or altered appearance that suggests improper storage, environmental damage, or cleaning. Even experienced collectors sometimes miss the subtle die polishing lines, planchet irregularities, or mint-induced artifacts that distinguish a 67 from a 68, and that's precisely why third-party certification through PCGS, NGC, or ANAX has become absolutely essential for transactions in this elite grade range. The market demand trends backed by actual data show that Lincoln Memorial cents from the mid-1990s in superb gem grades have been experiencing remarkable appreciation, driven by multiple factors that serious collectors understand intimately. Registry set competition continues to intensify as more collectors pursue finest known rankings, creating sustained demand for Population 1 and Population 2 specimens. The growing recognition that modern coins can represent genuine alternative investments has attracted capital from collectors who previously focused on classic series. And perhaps most significantly, the demographic reality that collectors who were children in 1996 now have established careers and disposable income to pursue the finest examples from their youth has created a new generation of serious competitors for these coins. Smart collectors targeting the 1996D understand that they're acquiring verified specimens that represent genuine statistical anomalies, coins that survived nearly 3 decades of potential damage to emerge in pristine condition that defies mathematical probability. The price appreciation over documented time frames demonstrates the extraordinary power of condition rarity in modern series. A 1996 decent in MS65 red that might have sold for a few dollars in the early 2000s now commands substantially more, and the progression to MS67 and MS68 red creates value multiples that would impress any financial advisor. But I want to emphasize something that I know you, as an experienced collector, already understand at a deep level. These values apply exclusively to professionally authenticated and graded specimens from recognized services. An ungraded 1996 decent, no matter how pristine it appears to your experienced eye, cannot command these premiums because the market relies on third-party verification to establish the trust, consistency, and protection that serious transactions require. The connection moments in numismatics often arrive when we realize that the coins from our own lifetime, the ones we handled as adults or gave to our children for allowance, might now represent significant stores of value. There's a particular poignancy in holding a 1996 decent and remembering that this was the year we might have watched the Atlanta Olympics, listened to the Macarena on the radio, or upgraded to Windows 95. These aren't mere nostalgic attachments. They're the emotional threads that weave numismatics into the fabric of our personal histories. The next coin we're covering next has a documented discovery story that changed how collectors view an entire era of Lincoln cent production, and the technical characteristics we'll explore reveal why some dates from this period defy easy categorization. Stay with me because the minting anomalies we're about to examine create legitimate scarcity through documented production variables that even professional graders find noteworthy. What's ahead involves grading population data that explains why certain coins from the 1990s command serious collector attention despite their enormous mintage figures. If you're finding this information valuable, I'd appreciate your subscription to the Coin Merchant so we can continue bringing you thoroughly researched content that honors your intelligence and respects your collecting experience. The documented auction history reveals something fascinating about market evolution and how collector perceptions shift over time. A coin that serious dealers might have sold from bulk bins for minimal premiums in the early 2000s can now command prices that require careful authentication, insurance consideration, and strategic acquisition planning. This evolution reflects the maturation of the modern coin market, the increasing sophistication of grading standards, and the competitive dynamics of registry set collecting that show no signs of diminishing. The technical characteristics that distinguish common 1996 decents from valuable varieties include careful examination of the mint mark for repunching or positional anomalies, assessment of overall strike quality for the sharpness that indicates early die state before polishing degradation, and evaluation of surface preservation for the pristine condition that separates gem from superb gem. Professional authentication resources provide the certification infrastructure that makes these extraordinary values possible, and their population reports offer the transparency that informed collectors require for confident acquisition decisions. Current market trends driving demand based on actual sales data and collector competition show that even as new collecting areas emerge and market preferences evolve, the demand for finest known Lincoln cents remains remarkably robust. New collectors entering the field, often inspired by childhood memories, inheritance discoveries, or the satisfaction of tangible assets in an increasingly digital world, bring fresh perspectives and renewed competition for the absolute best specimens. The investment and collecting methodology for modern issues like the 1996 D requires understanding that patience, knowledge, and proper preservation compound over time in ways that can be genuinely transformative. A collection of raw, ungraded 1996 D cents, even if visually appealing, represents unrealized potential rather than established value. The transformation from potential to realized value occurs through professional grading, and the difference between a coin you estimate at MS-67 and a coin that actually certifies at MS-67 can be measured in thousands of dollars. Historical context behind production at the Denver Mint in 1996 reminds us that this facility was operating at enormous capacity to meet national coinage demand during a period of strong economic growth, and the pressure to maintain production quotas sometimes affected the quality control processes that produce finest known specimens. The coins that escape this high-volume environment in absolutely pristine condition represent genuine statistical miracles. Real discovery accounts from collectors who have found superb gem 1996 D cents in original mint sets, carefully preserved bank rolls, or inheritance collections remind us that opportunities still exist for the knowledgeable, patient, and observant. While the era of finding valuable coins in everyday pocket change has largely passed, the secondary market continues to yield surprises for those who understand precisely what to look for. Research methods for determining if your 1996 D cents warrant professional evaluation should include honest comparison with certified examples, consultation of current population reports from all major grading services, and careful examination under proper lighting and magnification that reveals details invisible to casual observation. Fellow collectors, if this analysis has been helpful, consider subscribing and sharing with others who appreciate serious numismatic information delivered with respect for your experience and without the hype that insults your intelligence. The 1996 D Lincoln penny worth $44 million represents the theoretical maximum that this date could achieve under optimal market conditions, combining ultimate grade rarity with registry set necessity, major auction house visibility, and the competitive dynamics that drive finest known specimens to extraordinary levels. What makes this figure significant is what it reveals about the market's mature recognition that condition rarity creates genuine scarcity regardless of original mintage figures, and that modern coins can achieve values that rival classic rarities when all factors align perfectly. Your subscription and engagement help us invest in better research and content, so if you're finding this worthwhile, I'd welcome your support as we continue exploring these fascinating numismatic opportunities together. The legacy and inheritance angles remind us that collections assembled during the mid-1990s, perhaps by parents or grandparents who saved mint sets or acquired rolls from bank visits, might contain superb gem specimens that have appreciated in ways that surprise families during estate evaluations. What was set aside as a casual hobby, a simple act of saving, or a gift for grandchildren has become, in some cases, a significant store of value that transforms assumptions about modest collections. Old collections containing modern fortunes exist in safe deposit boxes, dresser drawers, and storage containers across America, waiting for knowledgeable examination by heirs who may not realize what they're handling. The satisfaction of discovering unexpected value in a familiar object, of holding a coin that spent decades in ordinary circulation before somehow emerging in pristine condition, represents one of numismatic's most profound pleasures. The 1996 D cent, struck in the year that saw the launch of the Nintendo 64, the release of the movie, Independence Day, and the beginning of Google's development in a Stanford dorm room, represents a specific cultural moment that resonates deeply with collectors who experienced those transformative times. These personal connections to era of circulation create emotional bonds that transcend pure financial considerations, though the investment potential certainly enhances the appeal for serious collectors. As you examine your own holdings, remember that proper storage in inert materials like mylar flips or acrylic holders, protection from environmental contaminants including PVC, moisture, and sulfur compounds, and careful handling that prevents contact marks and fingerprints represent the absolute foundation of numismatic value preservation. A 1990 60-cent stored in its original government packaging since 1996 has a dramatically better chance of retaining red designation than one subjected to circulation, improper storage, or well-intentioned but destructive cleaning attempts. The distinction between red-brown, and brown can mean the difference between a coin worth pocket change and one worth a substantial investment, and understanding these nuances separates informed, successful collectors from casual accumulators who miss genuine opportunities. The market for Lincoln Memorial cents from the mid-1990s continues to evolve as registry set competition intensifies. New collectors discover the challenges and rewards of pursuing finest known specimens, and established collectors upgrade their holdings in pursuit of ever higher rankings. Whether you're building a complete date and mint mark collection, competing for registry set recognition, or simply appreciating the historical significance of these small copper-plated discs that passed through millions of American hands, the 1996 Denver issue offers both accessibility for beginning collectors and extreme rarity at the highest certification levels that challenges even the most advanced specialists. Its place in the broader series reflects the Denver Mint's operational characteristics during a period of enormous national demand and economic prosperity, while its condition rarity reminds us that even in an era of mechanical precision and massive production, perfection remains the rarest and most valuable commodity in all of numismatics. I want to thank you for staying with me through this exploration of these remarkable modern Lincoln cents, and I hope the information we've shared has been genuinely valuable to your collecting journey. If you value accurate, well-researched coin information, subscribing to the Coin Merchant ensures you won't miss future discoveries we uncover, and I welcome your comments about your own experiences with these dates. Please share this information with fellow collectors who appreciate substantive content, examine your personal collections carefully for the characteristics we've discussed, and remember that knowledge, patience, and proper authentication represent the three pillars of successful numismatic collecting. The world of rare coins rewards those who take the time to learn, and I'm grateful to be part of your continuing education. Welcome to the channel, and I'll see you in the next deep dive.